over 2/3 of people believe that what is on social media could be fake. And that, again, social media has provided a great platform for us to engage with people in a much more intimate, much more sustained way. And actually, it's not in our interests to have people feel that the information and the messaging they're getting is not valid.
How's that impacting the way you might market or advertise? Because brands are almost trusted in this environment where there's a lot of fake news coming at you.
Well, I think it comes back to this: brands and companies really understanding what their values and beliefs are, understanding what they stand for. And if the messaging is consistently about that, or consistently builds that, and is in keeping with that, then I think it'll be much easier for people to spot it when it's not accurate or not right or being planted from somewhere elsewhere.
If you try and manipulate consumer beliefs or perceptions based on a kind of false understanding of what is true and not true, that is not a long-term strategy. I'm old enough to remember the days where, you couldn't, if you wanted to place an ad in Time magazine, there was the editorial group and then there was the advertising and sales group, and they didn't come together very often because there was a real high degree of sensitivity around what is news and what has an editorial lens to it and what has an advertising and marketing one. And I think obviously with digital channels now, that's a blurred line, but that line's going to have to become clearer.
The arrival of the internet and online means the media landscape has changed forever. In newspapers, it was obvious what was editorial and what was advertising. Now, it's not so clear.
The era of traditional advertising as we know it is past. There's an increasingly grey area between editorial and branded content. We, as an industry, are always pushing our clients and brands to think like editors. I think it's about understanding the news agendas and reacting to those, or sometimes in certain instances setting those news agendas as well.
Publishers or media owners, broadcasters, are trying harder to invent new forms of advertising format that they think their younger consumers will respond to a lot better. Whether it's types of video that look like they're part of the site, articles that look like they're generated by that publication, or even things like Snapchat lenses you could classify as forms of native content. I think it does bring about a number of challenges, though, for the marketplace and specifically for consumers who won't necessarily always realise that this is advertising.
Perhaps the audience has just got so used to having access to free content online, they forget that at some point it has to be paid to be created. Internet sites have become a victim of their own success.
If you're a media or news outlet, you have to make money somehow. So I think we are seeing a paradigm shift in how that, how that money is found. And I think there's probably going to have to be closer collaboration with brands and with agencies about how you keep the journalistic integrity of content whilst also ensuring that you can deliver it in the fastest, freest and most efficient way possible.
But if ad blockers are killing online advertising revenue, aren't advertisers just getting clever with content to bypass them?
Technology like ad blockers could be a very positive move because it forces brands to become more creative, forces news and content channels to become smarter.
The challenge for marketers is, how do they stand out in a way that makes their brands clearly recognisable, yet not irritate consumers, and yet make it clear that they're not part of editorial content and not distract the consumers from looking at the editorial content, which is why they were going there in the first place.
So as the online world evolves, do we need a new global rulebook to redefine the lines between commercial and editorial?
Whatever ground rules you're going to be putting in place today could be obsolete tomorrow, but there have to be some principles that are agreed, and there have to be some principles which people can respect and work to.
Regulation hasn't kept pace, and self-regulation hasn't kept pace either by influencers or by publishers. In the UK, for example, we've got fairly tight regulations about how advertising should be presented. And the issue obviously is that we are now living in a global marketplace. People will follow influencers from the United States, which has different regulations to the UK, on Instagram, for example. So actually, I think more coordinated control is actually needed.
But going forward, isn't this a greater issue than just about advertising in editorial?
I think there's a huge danger that trust will be damaged if advertising isn't clearly delineated when consumers are looking at content on websites, on their mobile or whatever. And it is also actually, if you think about it, is a danger for brands as well, because if things aren't clearly delineated as advertising, then the brands won't get any credit for that.
We believe that there is an inherent trust in brands and brand messaging sometimes, and there's a purity to that which can be a positive, definitely, to consumers out there. I think increasingly we're going to see a blurring between the two lines of editorial and branded content. It's the way that the world is moving. But one of the things that both the brands themselves, the consumers, and the media outlets, they've got to find a middle ground and something that respects all parties.
Hello, I'm James Wright. Thanks for watching Marketing Media Money. To check out more online videos, just click on the boxes and don't forget to subscribe to the CNBC Live channel at the bottom of the screen.